Welcome back to the Daily Lift. And today I want to talk to you about David and Goliath. One of my favorite stories, and it's one that we all remember from our childhood. But when was the last time that you actually revisited David and Goliath? May have been a while. Well, if it has, let me remind you of the story here. And so David was the youngest of seven brothers, 8 sons. And he was left tending the sheep while his older brothers went off to war. And so David is checking on his brothers. He's bringing them some care packages, and he sees what has been going on for 39 days, which this is the 40th day, morning and afternoon. This giant of a warrior would come out in front of the Israeli army, the Hebrew army. He would come out on the other side of the valley, and he would say, "I defy the God of the Israelites. You guys pick somebody who will fight me. And if I win, you are my slave. You will be the Philistine slaves. And if you can kill me, the Philistines will be your slaves." And so, as I said, this was going on for 40 days. And the 40th day, David happened to show up. And he hears this, enraged that someone would say this while everybody else is trembling in fear. As a youth, teenager, we don't know exactly how old, maybe 16, maybe 18, we don't know exactly, but he's a young man, and he is seen as a young person. And so his brother jeers him, and he says, "What is going to be done for the man who defeats this guy? Because I will. Nobody else will, I will." And so word gets out to Saul, the king, that there is a guy there that wants to fight Goliath. And so he gets in front of him, and he says, "This guy has been a warrior since his youth, and you're just a youth. What are you going to do against him?" And David responds with, "While I've been tending my father's sheep, the wolves, the lions, the bears, they've come out and they've taken the sheep." And it's interesting what David says there, that he grabs them by the scruff of the chin, and he struck them and killed them and delivered the sheep from them. I don't know how many 16, 17, or 18-year-old boys that you know, young men, that are going to hand-to-hand combat with wild animals, especially a lion and a bear. But anyways, we'll get back to that. So David here is recounting to Saul how God has preserved him through these wild animals that would destroy any man, and that he'll do the same. God will preserve him through this battle with Goliath. And so he gives him his armor. He says, "I can't wear this. I haven't practiced in this. I haven't prepared it. I haven't tested it." And so David goes against Saul with a sling in his hand and 5 smooth stones. And he strikes that giant, and he knocks him down, and he takes his head with the giant's own sword. And as he predicted, the birds of the air picked the flesh from his bones that day. The Philistine army flees in terror. They are captured, and David quickly rises in ranks as a mighty man of valor. And I was thinking of the story, and I was thinking, man, David here is so amazing. He certainly rose to the occasion, until I remembered this quote. I think it was by a Marine, but he said, "You don't rise to the occasion, but you fall back on your preparation." And at that moment, I thought, wow, David was certainly prepared for this. He didn't just fall into this, and just because he believed in God, even though the faith of David was so great, and that was his strongest attribute. However, David was preparing for this. David was a shepherd. He was a husbandman. He was a warrior at this time. He would fend off all of these wild animals. David had to manage these animals. He was developing so many skill sets. His lineage, his grandfather and grandmother were Boaz and Ruth. And so we remember them from the book of Ruth. And so we have this lineage, great-grandfather, great-grandmother, we have this lineage of great men and women of faith that he comes from as well. And through the story, we can get so much edification and insight into how to be faithful and what God desires of us, because this man was one of the primary examples of someone who could be considered a man after God's own heart. And so when we look at David, I want you to be encouraged by his faith. Remember, the way that David had such great faith is because he spent time in the Word of God. He spent time meditating on it, dwelling upon it. And to the point, read the Psalms. You'll see his deep, deep understanding of God. We also want to make sure that in our day-to-day lives, that we are preparing for the Goliaths in our own lives. God is going to test us and develop us, so when those times come, we can withstand that too. Because as Christians, we're not promised an easy life here. On this earth, we are travelers and we are pilgrims. And oftentimes, and it is the only thing that is promised, we're going to face adversity and trials and hardships and struggles in this life. So I want to encourage you to look to David at his faith. See how he was prepared and how he overcame even a giant. Because there's going to be giants in your life that you'll have to overcome, or else you'll allow them to overcome you. So I want to encourage you today to look to David and his faith, reread the story of David and Goliath, and renew your faith again. And as always, go lift someone up.